Yeah, you know what?
Easy to say. So, hey, everybody. It is the 17th of June, 2024. It's Monday. It's 1300 UTC, and we meet every week at this time for Cardano Go Live Coding. We've been meeting for the last few months because we're trying to achieve a few different goals at once. First, um, the Andamio crew and the Gimbalabs crew and the Blink Labs crew have been starting to collaborate because Blink Labs is building great Cardano Go infrastructure and libraries, and Gimbalabs and Andamio are learning how to use them. So we wrote a Fund 11 Catalyst proposal where we would start to look at what these two teams, Gimbalabs and Andamio, needed to build some of what they were trying to do, get help from the Blink Labs team, and then to uh, kind of catalog and organize what we had learned together into a course. And the outline of that course is what you see on my screen right here. We've spent some time over the last few sessions defining titles for each of these course modules, and you can see those on my screen. We've also started writing learning targets for some of these. So last week, we refined the learning targets at the start, knowing enough about Cardano, understanding the essentials of Ouroboros, right? Having just enough of these things, and then looking at a few example libraries. This is a nice way to get started. And then with those prerequisites set, we can run a few lessons about interacting with, for example, a Cardano node. Now, as we continue planning this course, writing the learning targets, and then soon, and this is really what I want to touch on today, adding assignments, projects that students are going to work on to learn how to do these things. A really cool thing happens. We start moving forwards and backwards through the course to make sure that it's all coherent. We can do our very best to draft these prerequisite modules, but we can't know if they're going to be sufficient until we start writing some of the future lessons and the future assignments. We might get to some learning target down here, which makes us say, hey, did we cover enough about Cardano in the introduction for people to be ready for this lesson down here? And that's a really nice thing when we start getting that ebb and flow between what we've covered already and what we want to cover next. Where this really starts to get practical is when we talk about assignments. Okay, so the structure of any course module. Let's zoom in on just one of them for a minute. Building simple transactions is a nice, uh, it's a nice grain size to think about, right? So if we want to build a simple transaction, maybe you want to learn how to create a wallet with the Bursa library, build a simple transaction with Apollo, and submit that transaction using Ouroboros. There might be more to it than that, but this is a pretty good place to start. And assuming we start with this, we can imagine an assignment that covers one or more of these learning targets. We could give it a title, right? So we have the chance to teach about these things individually. And then we have the chance to add an assignment where learners are doing something and generating some evidence that indeed they're able to do these three things. Any questions at this level? I'm just trying to talk about the building up the course narrative as we go and the role that our assignments are going to play. Any clarifying questions about any of that? Okay, so I mentioned the catalyst proposal. And another component of that is we would like to build a utility called Andamio CLI. the Andamio command line interface. Why might we want something like that? Let's shift our focus to what happens after students move through a course like this one. So people are going to work through modules once they're published. They're going to demonstrate by working on assignments that they're able to do certain things. And ideally, the next step is, well, now it's time to apply your skills. And we have a prototype of what's going to be built, integrated into the Andamio platform right after we finish delivering the course side of things. And that's the contributor platform. So the idea here is after you move through some learning content, that's going to generate a certain sort of credential. Because of the way Plutus works and our ability to look at on-chain data and use it to validate future transactions, we have the ability to set precise minting rules for who can be a contributor and see the tasks that are listed on this contributor dashboard. We're not going to look too deep into this. We've been spending a lot of time with this over at Gimbalabs, and we can come back to this anytime. But there's one thing I want to think about. We've got some tokens in a treasury validator, and we've got over at Gimbalabs with this prototype, 14 different contributors testing how all of this works. Commitments have been made and delivered upon, and new projects continue to be added to the list of what people can commit to. That's all great. What's not on this prototype yet is any sort of historic dashboard view. There will be. We just haven't spent the sprints to implement it yet, right? We've just got the working transactions right here, but not yet the historical data side of things. As it turns out, some of the Go libraries will be really helpful in helping us parse the data in a way that's really convenient to show a transaction history for a treasury like this one. Now that's really exciting. It gives us maybe something that we could play around with implementing into Andamio CLI. And the moment we can think about that, now we come back to the course view. Imagine that at the end of a contribution pipeline, we'd like to do something like parse transaction histories in a customized way that yields some important data about transactions passing through a contributor platform like we were just looking at. That is starting to sound really familiar, right? We can talk about querying the blockchain. Okay, query providers, the idea of an indexer might be valuable here. Where do we store that data? How do we want to retrieve it to build an API that's really easy to use for reporting that kind of historical data that I'm talking about? You can imagine that this feature that needs to be built into the contributor platform could serve as a really helpful assignment or project for people to work on, or at least see as an example as they move through this project-based course. Do we want to do something, right? Filtering transactions. Oh, yeah, I probably do want to do that. Filtering events. Yeah, probably, right? Using adder, by the time we get here, people might want to understand what adder is and how it's actually going to be a helpful tool in building the sort of histories that I'm talking about. So now we can start to think about, just like we can move up and down through a course, and we can say, okay, are these prerequisites getting us to these assignments? We can also think beyond the course and think about things we want to build and what needs to be taught in order for maybe other folks to start picking up some tasks and helping with contribution to those. So those are the cycles that we're initializing right now. And I really just wanted to have today to kind of get our heads around those cycles and see if that makes sense. So does that make sense? And what questions did I just raise for you? Thinking about how we move towards contribution.
Uh, One question is, James, let's say one contribution becomes so hard that no one pass or no one is able to pass. What would what happen in that situation? Do we help people to pass that, or we change the whole assignment and subject in order for them to pass, or I don't know, do the contribution, or still keeping it as it is to be worthy because no one were able to do that.
What's an example of what might make it difficult enough that nobody could get it done?
For example, we encounter like a situation right now. We encounter a bug or an error, which no one is able to figure it out, and it has different forms in different system. The root is not clear. So the contribution or that task or that assignment, in order to finish it, you have to go through this step. You have to finish this step. For example, submitting a transaction, and you can't. No one can. Then what happened? Do we change it or no? Still, we will keep it as it is, and that would be something interesting to follow up to dig in.
So one thing that makes a project hard is that it might, at this moment, just be impossible, and there's a community of people scratching their heads about it.
Yeah. So if it is impossible, I mean, at the current state, it seems impossible. Should we change it to something possible or no? Let's keep it impossible as it is. So
So
someone
there's
one day can make it possible.
the context matters, right? So we wouldn't want to put any impossible tasks inside the course, right? At
Yeah.
least in modules like 100 through 200, we want to make sure that everything we're offering to students to do is doable. Hello world, build a to-do list app, build a known transaction, right? Like these
Yeah.
kinds of things are what people are used to as they're learning. But eventually, if our course is successful, it's going to get people to the frontier of what we're all working on. And so, yeah, I think having a list of projects that are ongoing and hey, here's a known bug. Here's everything we know about it. If you took this module or that module, you're ready to join us and understand the bug. And now let's look at it together. And if that ends up as a project that's just waiting for somebody to, you know, solve the problem in a way that we're all really confident about it,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
I mean, it seems like a long time ago, but I thought that there had been conversation about having a debugging PBL, right? And, like to me, like, if there's a thing that nobody can do, because of a bug or whatever. I mean, like that problem you came in here with a couple of weeks ago when James was gone mix.
Yeah.
That was pretty esoteric shit, but like I thought that you had made some progress in the meeting, but like
I did. Yeah, it was great.
I think debugging as a course is interesting because of this larger community where you can go to somebody like Mike Hornan, and or any of these technical people and say, hey, why don't you talk to us for a day or so, or show us your lab or whatever they do. I mean, To me, that's kind of interesting shit because people are going to have bugs that they don't understand where they're coming from.
But you know, Steve, I didn't go to any computer science or computer engineering college or school, but I think I can say in very high confidence that they don't have a debugging lesson. Like debugging is kind of a merit, is a skill that you have to learn it by yourself, and no one can teach you, and no one can taught that. I mean, as far as I know, I mean, all of us, I can say that we have enough knowledge in computers, and we are tech savvy. I mean, some of us, of course, are great in computer knowledge and programming. But the thing is, I've never seen a course, not here, at college, in university, especially in module that people reach to so many bucks, and they teach how to solve problems. They teach about critical thinking, thinking out of box. You know, these are the documentation, these are the places, go read. But essentially how you solve a bug. Uh, it's kind of a journey that you have to, or with group of people you have to take and learn from your mistake, learn, I don't know, like learn from your scar. But maybe I'm wrong. If anyone can help, because if
This
it is
is why we do
possible,
project-based learning.
yeah,
This is exactly why we do it. So look at, I mean, Chris has this ingenious idea, module 301. What's it called? What to do when none of the above actually works, right? That that
yeah,
could point directly to debugging, right?
Mm.
But before we even get to that, who do you want on your team? Somebody who can tell you what, the documentation says, or somebody who can actually put it to work because they do have expert experience debugging. They have a great mindset that they know they're not stuck. They just got to figure this thing out. Like that's the priceless teammate that all of us here have the privilege of meeting. Mix, Adrian, Aurora, we don't work as closely, but like that's the secret sauce, right?
yeah.
And so where does it come from? Well, it comes from doing things. It comes from getting hands-on with stuff. And any any teacher at any level who's advocating for project-based learning, this is why, because it's not about just the content. It's about all the stuff that you're picking up along the way while you're getting your hands dirty that actually create value.
So you believe that we cannot have a really dedicated course for debugging or even module for debugging, but the debugging would be the byproduct of the journey that user learners take.
100%. 100%. And just I write like go try to read a textbook about debugging, your eyes will glaze over. I don't even know if any have been written, right? But
Yeah, I don't know
but this
exactly. There is no book about
this
that.
is the
Thank you.
craft. And so now, okay, going back to assignments. As a creator of assignments, we have a responsibility to try to create just the right amount of hurdles for people to approach as they're working through that assignment or project. And sometimes we might even be explicit about it. We can go look, for example, this is one thing we do in the PPBL course, right? If I look at Plutus PBL, and I just had the transactions part open in Go, let's look at this in PPBL. We have people build their first transaction that unlocks tokens from a validator address. Or rob the bank. Okay, cool. And here's the documentation, right? You're going to do this step by step and build this thing. Good, good, good. Fine, fine, fine. But we don't just go through this setup. At the end, we say, hey, wait a minute. Let's look at a series of things that could be wrong. Right, there it is. Sorry, it took me a while to scroll there. Invalid transactions. let's look at a whole bunch of different examples of error messages that could fire while you're trying to build the transaction that we just outlined above. So this is not straight debugging, but this is an early step towards that. Hey, errors are great, right? Developers know that having an error is just, I got to fix it. Sometimes it's easy to fix. Sometimes it takes weeks, right? And
Yeah.
we spin our wheels, but we can show people this from the very beginning. Hey, try to make each of these errors happen. Get a feel for where that error is coming from. Okay. And we can do the same. We can do it explicitly like I'm showing here, or we can craft an assignment where we know that unless somebody already has great experience, they're probably going to run into hurdle A or hurdle B. And when they do, we're going to be able to help them. And when we help them, that's really where we get a chance to like teach, right? Oh, you ran into that hurdle? Great. Let's look at that together because there's something really exciting happening right there.
Right. See. So in that course, in 301, we are going to talk about these like errors or no? Like for the sake of assignment, we will throw them something that doesn't work and they are going to solve it or like make it
We
work.
could. Yeah, we need to write what the learning targets might be if we keep a module with this name, right? But let's not even rush into that. We know we've got this, and at the end of the course, we might do something around troubleshooting, right? But I'm not even too interested in figuring out exactly what goes here until we knows what, excuse me, until we know what comes before it, right?
Mhm.
So like, let's look at the transaction one. Mix, for example, you have enough experience building transactions that you know some common errors. What's
Yep.
something that we might want to show people? Okay.
Well, regards to the is this simple transaction or
For now,
just
yeah, let's say that these are the learning targets. These learning targets are not complete. Creating a wallet with Bursa, building that simple transaction and submitting it. Let's assume we keep it simple for now.
okay.
What are some things that could go wrong at any one of these steps?
A simple transaction, I'm assuming it is sending a bunch of data from a wallet to another wallet. So it's
Right.
not even a contract interaction. So in that, first error would happen. I mean, the basic error would be not signing the transaction. Like you end up with the CBOR, which hasn't been signed, and you are trying to submit that CBOR. But now that's the question. Uh, we are going to teach them about Go and Apollo and all the stuff. But about the submission, are we going to submit them by Goroboros and Apollo or something else as well, like Lucid, Mesh?
Well, we have a learning
Just
target here.
Apollo and Goroboros.
Let's start here, right? Let's start with submitting it with Goroboros and then think about
Okay,
others. I think for the sake of this course, we don't have to worry too much about like the
okay.
Lucid or
So
Mesh submission options. Yeah.
let me ask this question from Aurora. How descriptive Goroboros error are, Aurora? Like for example, if I didn't sign a transaction and submit that, will I get very specific, nice looking error or no? It is something like a panic and I have to figure it out. What's wrong?
So um, the errors are all over the place. In the case of like submitting a transaction, if you're like talking to a local node via node to client and doing local TX submission, um, the node does give us an error back, but it's not it's in like a 17 level deep nested seaward structure that you can only like only if you know all the objects in that structure and how it's supposed to fit can you actually interpret the error. And so we've made it like there's some very specific sub trees of that error that Goroboros supports, but most of them are not. And so, yeah, we cannot currently get good transaction submission errors using Goroboros. We have the same problem with the Blink Labs TX Submit API, to the point where sometimes I have to tell people, like, if you're trying to debug what's wrong with this transaction, like, you have to use the IOHK Submit API because it can actually interpret those errors and will give you. It's still a pain to look at and interpret, but there's words and stuff instead of just nested structures with numbers. So
I see. So that would be something, an error would be not signing. Another error normally is they try to spend a UTXO that doesn't exist, like they spend it somewhere else. They try to send an amount from a UTXO or set of UTXO that they don't have, or that wallet that doesn't have. And what else?
How does that happen? How does that happen? How do
Well,
you get a UTXO that doesn't exist? A typo or what?
no.
Well, it can either already have been spent or it can just be a reference to something that doesn't exist. You can
Okay.
you can put whatever arbitrary values you want into the transaction inputs when you're building one. It doesn't have to be a real UTXO, but the node will reject it because it doesn't match an unspent UTXO that it has in the ledger database.
Yeah.
And then if they build their wallet with Bursa and they do not really because the signing. I mean, I don't know, maybe you guys changed it the last time, but the bits in that private key, if they didn't really build that signing key correctly, that signing key, that transaction can get signed, but that signing doesn't match with the public key. So that actually can happen. So they have to be really like their wallets and the configuration and driving the signing keys and verification keys must be good and must be correct. If not, they will try to sign a transaction and that signing doesn't match with the owner or the pub key hash stored on the ledger for that UTXO. So that can happen. They have to be careful about that. And then what else?
And that's not just a Bursa specific problem. Like you can provide the wrong private key file, for the wallet you're
Yeah.
trying to send from. It's not Bursa specific.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think Bursa has very it throw an error that say, hey, I'm getting wrong file or this doesn't match to the signing. Or no, it does have. Right? Bursa can tell.
Bursa does not, but I mean, right now it does not support loading from files. It's only generating the keys from
Yes, seed phrases.
from a mnemonic phrase, and it doesn't do signing directly yet either. So there's no circumstances in the stuff it supports where it could have these problems or detect them. Not yet.
Yeah. Okay.
We're
That
getting
would
there.
be these are good projects. Honestly, these are really good, and I think small enough for them for the people to just start contributing. It's not too big. It's just actually they can add stuff. They can even ask ChatGPT to write the code for them. To be honest, but yeah, this can happen. So that signing, like they have the signing, but they don't really understand. And then uh, The other thing is, well, they have to provide the UTXOs to their signing, or they should query that, they should give to the transaction building their specific transaction ID and index of each UTXO. If they don't have, they have to provide an address or set of addresses and query block for us. So an error can happen that they don't understand. The block for us returns nothing, or they have connection error, or that address doesn't have something and it doesn't add anything to the transaction as input to be a spent, or for the Apollo to do the coin selection, all sort of all these stuff. So that can happen. So the third party, the API, and same thing for Maestro as well. So that error can happen about the connection to the third-party blockchain explorer. What else?
Well, so this is a perfect just amount of thinking to now let us zoom out, right? So we're going to have some assignment that might expose students to any number of those errors or other ones, right?
Yeah.
We preceded this assignment with lessons about these learning targets, creating a wallet with Bursa, building that simple transaction with Apollo, submitting it. And so now we're able to say in an assignment, let's build on what you just did. We're going to use the wallet perhaps that you created in lesson 102.1. Cool. You're going to have to be able to query some UTXOs as you saw in 102.2. Cool. And we're going to build a transaction. Maybe we want to say here, similar to what you did in 102.2, but what's maybe the twist, right? What if we suppose that in lesson 102.2, they sent a really simple transaction with just one output? But maybe in this assignment, you're going to send a transaction with multiple outputs to two different addresses, right? Something like that. A simple next step beyond, right? Or what else can you imagine there?
A step beyond can be something good actually in each lesson. Like if you pass these like these requirement or these box, it's enough, great. But if you can just push a little bit further, that would be great. It's like, in gym, in bodybuildings, there's this thing that if you push for failure, like if you do the of one rep, just one single rep, that's the one that does the muscle building. So I like that. And for them, we can sure go for the two output, and we can do for time, set validity, the time, like how long this transaction is valid. So they can say, okay, we can ask them, add time to this transaction. So, okay, it is valid for 15 minutes. If it doesn't get submitted within 15 minutes, and it is not just in like you sign that from the moment of creation of this transaction till signing, and of course mempool, all has to be 15 minutes. So this can even help them to be ready for next transaction.
Let's run with this. Okay, so now we can start to see, we're sitting here, we're brainstorming what the assignment might be. We're imagining some hurdles that we might want students to encounter and how we can craft an experience for them to go to where we have a pretty high level of confidence that they will run into these things that are valuable to have run into. And now we start to imagine other twists on the assignment. For example, time. Well, when I think about time and transactions, that sounds like it's worth it to maybe have a lesson of its own. We have creating wallets, okay. We can build a simple transaction, okay. We can submit it. Maybe we want a learning target about signing.
Yeah, I can sign.
With
TX
Bursa,
with
right?
sign, yeah, with Bursa, yes.
Okay, and that would probably come before submission. But what about a learning target like, something about time? I can set a validity interval for a transaction.
And the nice thing is we can see these time in the seaboard itself. Like for example, for submission, we cannot know this transaction was submitted with Gorovos, I don't know, with BlockForce or something else. But if they add these time, we can really see them in the seaboard.
Okay, so now imagine the order of this story. Okay, a lot of this makes sense to me. Build a wallet, then build a transaction, sign the transaction and submit the transaction. That feels cohesive. Maybe there's something in here about funding the wallet, but maybe that's just part of the lesson about creating it. That's okay. Now, validity intervals, if we do something about time in transactions, does that go before we teach about signing? Or do we teach the whole thing and then tack this on at the end so that people can try to use it in an assignment? Or does it go in a completely separate module? Does it
Is
not
there
belong?
anything like optional SLTs, James?
Sure, we can say whatever we want about which ones are required.
Yeah.
And assignments, this is one of the things that the assignment allows us to do, right? Like in this right now, you see 3 of them are green and 2 of them are not. We can decide which learning targets are actually essential and assessed and mark those ones green and which ones are not.
Well, the third one, the signing with Bursa, is necessary. Like, without them, it's
Right.
impossible
Yeah,
to
exactly. No, that's just
stop.
because how I left it.
But optional, I think that would be something about the time. And the decider, I mean, I think the transaction ID would be the proof. I don't know if
Yeah,
we.
exactly.
So the
Exactly.
transaction ID, the decider can look into it, and if the decider see the time inside the CBOR, great. I would, I don't know, give you something. I don't know. I approve that you did this optional. If there is no time in that CBOR, you weren't able to do the optional. So it's like again, kind of is on-chain proof. So
Right,
we didn't.
exactly. Exactly.
And I should say it's quite easy, but we don't. I think would be great that we don't tell them. Like they should let's
Right.
them figure it
And
out
that
because there are
this
two
is the thing.
functions.
If something is easy, it's not our job to make that thing feel unnecessarily hard, right?
Yeah,
If something is easy, hey, here's how to do it. We expect you to be able to do this. And so that's really elegant. Look, we're also going to show you how to set time validity. Yes, you should know how to do this. And guess what? That's going to be part of this assignment right here. That's okay. Actually, this gets really interesting if we have a challenge, like, can you build a transaction that consumes UTXOs from 2 different addresses? Can you try to set up a second Bursa wallet and create a single transaction that takes inputs from both, and then where both sign it? That could be an interesting challenge, but
I
we'd have to scaffold it right.
yeah, and I can say that instead of using a function that actually makes life easy for adding inputs to Apollo, let's ask them use add input function
Mhm.
this time.
Right, right.
Because
Well,
they have
that's what
to
builds you.
add these UTXO one by one.
Exactly. That's what prepares you to build tools that abstract those processes. You have to
Yeah,
have seen it once so you understand what you're abstracting.
yeah. I see a Steve's hand. Steve?
You know, in, what I'm wondering about is Hinson's project to do high speed trading, and I'm wondering about, how do they I think it would be an interesting comparative study. You know, you got a time validity window, right? You know, like I just know from trading, they can't just hang around unsigned for a while because the price may change and all that. But with this high speed trading, I mean, you're like, isn't that an interesting time factoring kind of way to build a transaction, or does it require such a different framework that it's not applicable to this at all?
Well, any DEX that doesn't include a validity interval in a transaction is negligent. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
so if we
Yeah.
appreciate, right, if we appreciate that, then the question becomes, okay, do we try to include that as a written detail in an early course module? Or does that push us beyond the point of overwhelm for a student
Mhm.
who's in this early module of the course? And I don't know what the answer is, right? But we have to think about it. Is the amount that we're going to try to shove into people's brain at this stage in the course appropriate? And if so, keep shoving. But if not, think about where else that information could go. And there's a few different places. One, we could save this for later. We could say, all right, we're going to introduce time intervals now, but we're not going to worry about why they're important until module 202, when we're going to revisit this concept in a learning target about app building. That's one way it could go. Another direction it could go is we could say, well, you know, that thing about DEXs and trading and maybe even high frequency trading, that's a good lecture note for a live coding session that students are going to be ready for after they work through some simple stuff here on their own. This could be a really nice conversation topic to have in our back pockets at a live coding session. And anybody who ever facilitates live coding should keep a track of those items. You always have it, right? What's a direction that we might take this conversation if people feel ready for it, right? So that's just where you're if you're building a course right, if you're really engaged with it, you're going to keep having ideas like the one Steve just shared. And then the question is, okay, well, how do I follow through on that? Does it fit early? Is it better later? Is it a possible lecture note? Is it a different course, right? Is it something else? Or is it a project? Because now we finally come full circle. Remember, we're giving people assignments during the course because it's project-based learning. But why are they taking the course? Well, so they can start contributing to real projects. What are some of those real projects? Oh, those are listed in the treasury. And if there's something that we want people to explore at a deeper level, that becomes an R&D task or a development project, that kind of thing.
And about
It's
that
a, yeah.
time validity, Steve, something really nice can happen if I mean if this click in their mind. Because we have two time validity, you can set that a transaction is available or it is possible to be submitted from this time in future. So you can create a transaction and say this transaction is not possible to submit now. The node gives you error, but after 2 months from now, it is possible if the UTXO has not been spent, everything is set. So they can kind of come up with some idea that I can give the whole CBOR before the submission as a collateral, as a guarantee to someone. And once I did my job, that person can submit it. And if it is submitted, it shows that yeah, I was true to my word because I kept that UTXO for 2 months and I gave it a instant, and it is kind of complete decentralization because the UTXO didn't move from my wallet. I just hands out the CBOR, the transaction, and I told him it's like a check. Do not cash this transaction. 2 months from now, go and cash it. Still, I haven't seen the app to do that in Cardano. It is not possible to do it in Ethereum or any account base, but it is possible in Cardano that you can keep your stuff in your account like a bank, and you can issue check, and that check is basically a CBOR with a time validity. and time validity says that when you can cash this out. And if you do not have that money in your wallet, yeah, you cannot submit that. So I wonder if someone can come up with that idea and be able to pursue it. But there is this other time validity, which it's like a range. You can set less, so you can submit this transaction until like 1 month from now. After that, uh, I don't care. That UTXO is gone. Although it was in my wallet, you have 1 month of time to submit the transaction and retrieve or redeem or get the UTXO out of my wallet. If not, that's your problem. You had this for 1 month. So these idea might come to their mind once they reach to the building app. They will try to, I don't know, formulate it or make it real. But I just really wish that people who came to these module somehow, somewhere, something in their mind just pops up, an idea, something about that app we are going to talk. So I think these can provoke those places in the mind.
You know, I think there's two aspects to what you're saying, Nick. If just random people are coming into Andamio to take this course, all of that's a question, right? But if Andamio's got the platform and they've actually got corporate customers, or whatever you want to, not necessarily corporate, but there's a team from Kazakhstan and they want to bring trading to Kazakhstan, and they want to know how to build transactions, and they want to know how to trade, then you've got, much more of an impetus to really stick it to them, to really show them what hard shit is. And I don't know if I'm expressing myself well. I don't think I am. I think there's a difference. I think that the platform has to, and the teaching has to take a different orientation if you're doing it for money, rather than providing a service to just anybody who shows up.
It is not possible. To be honest, there is a little bit of big filter at the beginning because you have to know a little bit of Golang programming. Like at least you should be familiar with the syntaxes, like how you can run and compile all these things, and then we can start this journey. So, but still, I would love to see these randoms people, and I would love to meet people. I say I had no idea about not only crypto but the whole fintech, financial technology, and this course introduced me, and now I'm working on something. I think that would be really ideal, of course, but the publicity, like how they can find these. I found Gimbalabs through token distribution in Drip Drops. So maybe we will do something like that.
Well, of course, we used our time.
Yeah.
I said famous last words.
Yeah.
So for the next week, here's what to do. With these ideas in mind, what are some things we want people to do in this course? Think about it from this perspective of what learners are going to do as they work through this process. That's going to give us the raw material to start building out this course. But also think about the things we're going to want people to be able to contribute to. I was not able to prepare it in time for this session today, but next Monday we will be able to look at a treasury prototype particular to this project. A small part of those catalyst funds can be dropped in a treasury, and we can start making a list of the projects we want people to be able to contribute to. And then we'll start to see how there's a pipeline direct from this course into those contributions. Does that sound okay to take these ideas for a walk once or twice this week?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing what we do with it. Thanks for making the most of this one, everybody. And yeah, I'm
Thank
excited to
you.
keep our season of deep thought going for a couple of weeks as we start to move towards this and getting the word out a little bit more. All right.
Indeed.
Till next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Have a great day and night. See you.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.